Behind the steel bars and high fences, lions are supposed to be contained. But when the animal's instinct takes over, no barrier is ever truly enough. Here is a collection of true horror stories of how and why people were attacked and mauled by lions in zoos and safari parks. 4 children have a terrifying encounter with lions. The true horror story of a group of children who lived near the Tanzania Wildlife Reserve and belonged to the Maasai community. They had a tragic encounter with lions close to where they live. Their days were filled with school lessons and the responsibilities of helping and looking after their family's cattle. The local people are farmers and are allowed to graze their livestock alongside wild animals within the national park. On August 2, 2021, after returning from school, the children were told that some of their cattle had wandered into the forests of the Ngorongoro Conservation Area. So the 4 boys set off to find the animals and round them up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest's shadows grew longer. The boys were having trouble finding the animals, so they ventured deeper into the vast area, unaware that the lions were lurking nearby. Lions, the apex predators of the savannah, are known for their stealth and strength. That evening, a pride of lions had set its sights not on the cattle, but on the unsuspecting children. So in a sudden and tragic turn of events, the animals attacked them. It is unknown why this happened to them on this particular day, because other children had successfully entered the area before, without any trouble. But this day, the lions decided they would maul and attack without mercy. The children were shocked at what was happening to them, but they managed to run in different directions. 2 of them were able to climb nearby trees, but the children stood little chance of escape. 3 of the boys were brought down by the animals and dragged away to be eaten alive, while a 4th child, Kiambwa Namuyata, was able to escape the incident and go for help. He was badly injured and was in hospital for weeks, but he was able to return home safely, where he eventually recovered. The whole community was in shock at what had happened. The Ngorongoro Conservation Area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, home to many wildlife, including lions, cheetahs, and leopards. The Maasai people are traditional herders and have grazed their livestock there for generations. Tanzania has witnessed numerous human-wildlife conflicts. In 2020, 36 lions were relocated from the Serengeti National Park because of repeated attacks on humans and livestock. A 5-year-old boy is eaten by a lion. It happened in an area of Gujarat's Amreli district in October 2024. Ayush Jolia was the son of plantation workers and lived in Navi Jikadri village. His parents were working nearby, harvesting cotton. He was playing with his brother behind their hut when the attack happened. The lioness came up behind him and grabbed the child by the head. His brother started screaming when he saw what was happening. The villagers ran to the area, but it happened so quick that they could do nothing to save him. The boy did not stand a chance as the lion dragged him away from the village. After a long search of the area, the child's body was found in some bushes. Some of his limbs were missing. This zookeeper wanted to impress his girlfriend. Mr. Iriskulov, 44, worked at a private zoo on 2 acres of land in Parkent in Uzbekistan. One night he decided to go to work early because he had a very important mission in mind. He wanted to impress his girlfriend with his work amongst the lions. This is why he was at the lion enclosure at 5 in the morning. The majority of the animals living at the zoo were 10 African lions and 5 cubs. He had his phone on video mode and was filming himself opening the padlock to the enclosure. When he went inside, still filming, the lions noticed he was there. But they remained calm and uninterested and continued to stay in the corner laying down. This wasn't very interesting to film, so he walked towards the animals and kept shouting at them. The lions ignored him at first until he got too close to them. Suddenly, they all jumped up at once and looked in his direction. They did not attempt to attack him. They just wanted the keeper to go away. When this happened, it startled Mr. Iriskulov, and he quickly jumped back towards the entrance. But he was still shouting at the lions, telling them to get back. So by now, the 3 animals had had enough and became very agitated. All the while that this was going on, the keeper was still filming on his phone. He turned the camera to himself and then back towards the lions. After all, this was for the benefit of his girlfriend. When the footage was later recovered, it showed that the lions were by now walking very fast in the enclosure and were showing clear signs of being agitated. And to make matters worse, he started to stroke the nearest lion to him on its mane. This, it seems, is what became the last straw for the animals. And then the camera showed the last horrifying moments of Mr. Iriskulov being attacked. One of the lions had jumped up to him and grabbed his arm in its mouth. This is when the phone is dropped to the ground. There was no more footage recorded and the video goes dark, but the sound was still recording, and the horrifying yells of Mr. Irisculop could be heard screaming in agony and telling the lions to stop. For those who heard it later, they said it was like listening to a horror movie, as it was apparent that he was being eaten alive by the lions because he was screaming in agony at the bites he was receiving all over his body. A minute later, the phone stopped recording completely, including the sound. It was only when the other workers arrived later that morning that he was discovered in the lion enclosure. He was laying on the ground, motionless and covered in blood. Parts of his body had been ripped away and eaten by the lions. The animals were loose in the park and had to be rounded up. The staff managed to capture 2 of the lions quite easily and incapacitated them with tranquilizer guns. The third lion was more aggressive and was acting crazy, so it had to be shot with a high-powered rifle. The manager had called the authorities, who arrived very quickly, but nothing could be done to save the life of the keeper. Poacher's nightmare, when the hunters became the hunted by lions. In the heart of South Africa's Eastern Cape lies the Sibuya Game Reserve, a sanctuary spanning 30 square miles. It is home to Africa's majestic Big Five: lions, leopards, elephants, buffaloes, and the endangered rhinoceros. Despite rigorous protection efforts of the rhinos, there is a reason that has made these animals prime targets for poachers. They are after the rhino horns, and the poachers do not care that these animals do not survive after these attacks. In many cultures, it is wrongly believed that the rhino horns possess medicinal properties. After dark one night, a group of 3 poachers sneaked into the reserve. They were armed with a high-powered rifle equipped with a silencer and other guns. These were the usual tools associated with rhino poaching. They were after the rhinos, but seemed to forget that there were other wild animals roaming the reserve freely as well. Unbeknownst to them, they were venturing into the territory of a formidable lion pride. Lions are known for their opportunistic hunting strategies and are fiercely territorial. And so as soon as the men entered the reserve, the hunters became the hunted. What happened in those harrowing hours when the lions pounced on the men is unknown. The pride, acting on instinct, nearly completely eliminated the intruders, leaving little evidence of their presence. The following morning, rangers discovered the horrifying scene. They found some scattered human remains, the only body parts there were, 1 skull and 1 piece of a pelvis. They also came across the rifle with the silencer, the axe, wire cutters, and other poaching paraphernalia. The only reason the rangers were able to state there were 3 missing hunters was that they also found 3 sets of shoes and 3 sets of gloves. A search helicopter was sent out over the reserve to locate any survivors, but none were found. It seems that the lions had got all the men who entered the reserve. Sibuya is one of the most popular game reserves in the South African province of Eastern Cape. But this also means that it is one of the most popular places for multiple break-ins by poachers in previous years. In 2016, 3 rhinos were shot by poachers and did not survive. They had broken into the reserve to cut off the animals' horns. For the following weeks, the reserve was inundated with inquiries about what happened to the lion pride that was responsible for the incident. People were concerned about the fate of the lions. The Sibuya Game Reserve made a statement that the animals would not be harmed. A zookeeper is mauled by a lion that he had raised since birth. Mr. Olawuyi was a man whose entire life revolved around caring for these wild animals, knowing that they could end his life in seconds. But he trusted these lions because he had brought them up since they were cubs. But what happens when that trust shatters? When the boundary between caretaker and predator is crossed in a heartbeat? This is a true horror story of Olabode Olawuyi, who loved the animals he had cared for and looked after for over 10 years. Obafemi Awolowo University is a respected institution in Nigeria and also has a small zoo on its premises. A place of curiosity for students, a symbol of education, a workplace for a dedicated man named Olabode Olawuyi. As a veterinary technologist, he had cared for these lions since they were born nearly a decade ago. But on one tragic Monday, a true horror story unfolded when the line between caregiver and prey was violently erased. Witnesses reported that Olawuyi had entered the lion enclosure for what was a normal and routine feeding time. This had been the regular occurrence for over 9 years, and the lions recognized him and responded to his voice. They were always calm and docile as a bond of familiarity had been forged over time. But on this day, something went terribly wrong. One of the male lions had noticed a door had been left slightly open and took its chance to go through it and attack. Even though the lion had known only kindness from Mr. Olawuyi, it was also a wild animal of power and primal instinct. So in that moment, the lion could only see prey in front of him and proceeded to lunge at Mr. Olawuyi. In an instant, the lion had jumped onto his body, brought him down to the ground, and was attacking him by biting his neck. Work colleagues rushed to help him, but it was too late. By the time they reached him, the lion's predatory strength had already claimed his life. The campus community was stunned and horrified, a mix of grief, fear, and disbelief. How could a lion cared for so intimately turn so violently on the very man who had ensured its survival? Yes, questions lingered, but it was a tragic mistake, a lapse in concentration and caution. And this is what triggered the awakening of an instinct buried deep within the lion's nature. So this tragedy was the result of a simple human mistake. A door had been left unlocked due to a moment of distraction. Students and staff recalled Olawuyi's kindness, his dedication to the animals, and his willingness to share knowledge with those who visited the zoo. To them, the idea of such a brutal end was unthinkable. The vice-chancellor of the university, Professor Adebayo Simeon Bamir, expressed his sorrow and explained there would be a thorough investigation. In the aftermath of the incident, the university released a statement that the lion responsible had been put down. The man who entered a lion's den and never left. Imagine standing face to face with a 400-pound wild lion. You lift your phone for a selfie, and in less than 3 seconds, you're fighting for your life. It was September 23, 2023, at the Delhi National Zoological Park. A man made an unthinkable decision to climb into the lion's enclosure. The consequences were swift, and he did not survive. Delhi Zoo is a sprawling 176-acre facility in India. It had never seen such a terrifying lion attack before. The safety measures in place were rigorous. Towering barriers, deep moats, security guards, and constant surveillance. But no system is foolproof, and this was the case in this instance. It was no match for a man who was driven by depression and desperation. Mr. Maksud Singh was a 30-year-old man who was struggling with personal issues. He was in a job in a factory that only paid him a low salary of just $144 a month. The family consisted of his parents and younger sister and himself. They all lived in a cramped one-room apartment, and life was beginning to wear him down. Recently, his behavior had become erratic. He obsessed over wildlife documentaries and showed signs of deepening instability. On that fateful Tuesday morning, he left home as usual, and the family assumed he was heading to work as he always did. But Mr. Singh never turned up there. It was later established that he spent the morning wandering around the town. After a few hours, he bought a ticket to the zoo. That afternoon, the zoo was busy, as hundreds of visitors were there to enjoy looking at all the animals. A school group had gathered at the lion enclosure with the excited children standing around the secure viewing area. There were lots of other tourists there too, excited for a glimpse of these wild animals. But what they then saw was a true horror story that unfolded right in front of them. Mr. Singh was calmly removing his shoes and placed them neatly on the ground. Only a few of the visitors even noticed what he was doing at first. And when he started to climb the fence, some of them shouted at him to stop. The security guards ran towards him, blowing their whistles to get his attention. But he just calmly ignored them all. And by now he was methodically making his way past the second fence. Even at this point, he was still safe, because there was a deep 18-foot moat that protected him from the lions. But then came the moment that sealed his fate when he jumped into the moat. This is when the lion took notice. It was 8-year-old Cher, and it had been transferred to the zoo from South Africa for the breeding program. At first, he lay still, watching the man make his journey into the enclosure. But then, the lion's ears flattened and his tail dropped into a hunting position. This was a warning sign of a lion preparing to strike at its prey. But Mr. Singh was unaware of the danger as he took out his phone. He wanted a selfie with the animal, and this was all that he was focused on. The lion then moved at lightning speed, covering nearly 100 feet in under 3 seconds. The impact was devastating for the man as he was knocked over. The crowd of people screamed in horror. The group of school children were rushed away from the scene. Some of the adults were also hysterical and could do nothing to help, but others tried to distract the lion. But nothing could stop what happened next. The animal raised its paw and slammed it down right onto his body as the claws ripped into the flesh of Mr. Singh. And once he was helpless on the ground, the lion bit into his neck and snapped it instantly. The lion then proceeded to drag his lifeless body towards its den. As all this was happening, chaos erupted around the enclosure. Security guards had arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The zoo's chief veterinarian led a high-risk operation to sedate the lion. It took 90 minutes and 2 precision-measured darts of ketamine and xylazine to put the lion under. Only then could authorities retrieve what remained of Mr. Singh. In the days that followed, debates raged. Some blamed the zoo's security, demanding higher barriers and stricter enforcement. Others pointed out that Mr. Singh was determined to get to the lion, and it did not matter how many barriers there were, he would still have gotten to the lion. His mental state was the cause of this incident, and he seemed to have been suffering some kind of breakdown. The lion involved was not harmed by the authorities, as it was accepted not to be his fault. But the lion's enclosure was fitted with extra security to stop the incident from ever happening again. The heartbreaking story of Megan van der Zwaan. It was a day like any other at the Dino King Game Reserve, until it wasn't. Megan van der Zwaan was just 22 years old. She never could have imagined the horrors that await her on what should have been a peaceful day out. She had no idea that a lion would soon attack her in a terrible way and without mercy. In 2018, Megan joined a friend for a visit to a renowned game reserve in South Africa. Her friend was writing an article and had scheduled an interview with Mr. Kevin Anderson. He was a man who was widely admired for his unique relationship with lions. He was famously dubbed the Lion Whisperer because he had dedicated years of his life to rescuing and rehabilitating lions. His methods were unconventional. He walked among the lions, pet them, and even encouraged human interaction, striving to build trust and understanding. Elsewhere on the reserve, Kevin and his team were leading 3 of their rescued lions on a walk. Suddenly, the lioness spotted movement in the distance, an impala darting through the brush. Her predatory instincts kicked in, and without warning, she bolted. Kevin and his team attempted to intervene, but the lioness was too fast, disappearing into the open plains. Meanwhile, Megan and her friend had arrived, and they parked their car near the fenced perimeter. As they were taking photos for the article, Megan noticed this lion running after an impala in the distance. She was excited by this unique photo opportunity and pointed her camera towards the animals. But just as she began to take photos of this, the lion suddenly stopped chasing the animal and turned towards Megan instead. Eyewitnesses could only watch in stunned horror as the lioness closed the gap. In mere seconds, the animal covered the distance between them and was attacking her immediately. Witnesses could only watch in terror as the lion pounced on Megan. Her friend, along with others, tried to help her, but the lion was too strong and was focused on mauling her. This all happened in an instant, and as she was attacked by the lion in front of everyone, panic erupted. Despite frantic attempts to intervene, the attack was brutal, merciless, and over in seconds, and then the lion ran off into the bush. Megan lay gravely injured, blood staining the earth. Emergency services arrived, but it was too late. Megan succumbed to her injuries, her young life cut short in a terrible tragedy. For Kevin Anderson, this event was more than a tragedy. It was a personal nightmare. The man who had devoted his life to protecting lions now faced the unimaginable, that one of his animals had done this terrible thing to a human being. In interviews following the incident, Kevin expressed his profound sorrow and regret. A man drank too much alcohol and decided to get a selfie with a lion. At Sri Venkateswara Zoo in Tirupati in India, a man climbed over a 4-foot wall and a 12-foot iron fence to get into a lion enclosure. It happened in February of 2024 to Mr. Prahalad Gurjar, 34. He is reported as saying that he wanted to get a selfie with one of the lions. An employee at the zoo was horrified and tried to stop him. But Mr. Gurjar saw that he was coming towards him, and he jumped on a water tank to get over the high fence. Once he got into the enclosure, a lion immediately jumped onto him. He was able to climb a tree, but the lion pulled him back onto the ground. The animal then mauled and bit the man several times on his arms, neck, and head. The handlers managed to get the 3 lions back into their cage and away from his body. Even though it took only about 15 minutes for the lions to be secured in a cage, they were too late to save the man's life. The Game of Thrones VFX creator attacked by a lion. In 2015, 29-year-old Catherine Chappell was a talented visual effects artist who had worked on the TV series Game of Thrones. She was visiting South Africa to photograph the beauty of its wildlife. Little did she know this adventure would end in tragedy. As her vehicle stopped near a pride of lions, Catherine began to take photos through an open window. Suddenly, a lion leaped into the car window and attacked her, sinking its teeth into her neck. Witnesses watched in horror as the lion dragged her away, leaving no time for a rescue. Despite being surrounded by trained guides, the incident had happened too fast and she could not be saved. Attacked by a lion he had reared since it was a cub. Mr. West Matthewson, 69, lived at Lion Tree Top Lodge in South Africa. In 2020, he was walking his two white lions around the property. This was his regular routine with these two animals that he had reared since they were cubs. His wife, Jill, 65, was driving behind him, and she took in the peaceful scene as it had happened every day for years as the lions had grown up. But this day she could only look on in horror as one of the lions suddenly pushed her husband to the ground, and without any warning it began to bite him in his neck and head. When help got to him, he had lost too much blood and was not able to be saved. A young girl is attacked and eaten by lions. Bhavna Baria and her cousin Rekha lived in Danfulia in India. They were part of a family of migrant farm laborers. It was nighttime, and they had left their hut to go for a walk. They were enjoying the cool air as they chatted and laughed. The children were completely unaware that they were in danger, until two lions appeared right beside them on the path. They had no time to react, because almost instantly, one of the animals had jumped onto Bhavna's body and pulled her down to the ground. The lion then grabbed her head in its mouth, completely covering it, and held the young girl in its grip. Her cousin Rekha was terrified and screaming at what she was seeing. It was only when the second lion started to attack Bhavna and had began to bite her leg that Rekha was able to scramble down the path for help. Lots of people from the village were already running, but they got there just in time to see Bhavna's body being dragged away by the lions. By the time that the others had caught up with the animals, it was too late to save Bhavna. She was already gone, and the lions were eating her legs. A 27-year-old safari guide is eaten by two lions. It happened in the Marrakech National Park in South Africa in 2021. Malibongwe Mfila, 27, worked as a safari guide at Marataba Luxury Lodges. His job involved tracking down where the wildlife were in the 22,000-hectare grounds of the safari park. On this day, he was driving around in the bush looking for animals like elephants, cheetahs, and lions. Once he knew their locations, he could relay back to the other rangers where the animals were. But as he was walking away from the car, he did not realize that two young lions were stalking him. They suddenly attacked him and brought him down, but he was helpless on the ground, and the lions proceeded to eat him alive. What was left of his body was later recovered for his family. A man was attacked by a lion at a wildlife park in Nigeria. Mr. Babaji Dal, 35 years old, was an experienced lion handler at the park. That night, after the park had closed to visitors, he had taken some special guests to see him feeding the lions and for them to take photos. He got careless and maybe overconfident as he was showing them his feeding routine. He forgot to make sure the locks on the animal's safety protection gate were closed properly. And as he went to feed it, the lion suddenly jumped out and attacked him. It went straight for his neck, biting him several times. When help arrived, the lion had to be euthanized in order to release the man's body. A group of lions mauled a zookeeper. This happened at the Tigan Safari Park in Crimea. It is one of the largest breeding grounds for lions in Europe, with about 60 lions there. Ms. Leocadia Paravolova had worked at the park for 16 years and was very experienced. She entered an enclosure where 3 lions were in order to clean it. For safety reasons, the lions would be put in one of the 2 rooms in this enclosure, which were separated by a locked door. For some unknown reason, she entered the enclosure without shutting the bolt of the door. All 3 lions attacked and mauled her, giving her horrific injuries which she did not survive. Alexandra Black. She had only been working there for 10 days. In December 2018, 22-year-old Alexandra Black had just begun her job at a wildlife conservatory in North Carolina. Alexandra's love for animals had driven her to pursue a career in conservation. This was supposed to be the beginning of a promising career. But just a few days into her new job, tragedy struck. That day, the staff were cleaning a lion enclosure, so the lions were moved to a separate area. However, one of the lions managed to escape its holding area, and it charged at the nearby workers. But Alexandra was unable to get out of the way quick enough. To everyone's horror, she was attacked and mauled by the lion. But even with desperate attempts to save her, it was already too late. She succumbed to her injuries, which were severe bites, loss of blood, and trauma. She opened the window to get better photos. Catherine Chapley was visiting South Africa and was at a game reserve in 2019. She was in a vehicle and being driven around the park with other tourists. She could not see the lions that well, so she decided to open the window so that she could lean out to get a better view of the animals and to take more photos. But suddenly, out of nowhere, one of the lions jumped up and into the open window. The lion quickly grabbed Catherine and bit her on the neck a number of times. As she was continually being attacked, the tourists could do nothing to help her. At the hospital, she could not be saved because her injuries were too severe. He believed he had a special bond with the lions, but he did not. In 2019, Leon Van Biljon, 70, was on his property at the Mahala View Lion Game Lodge in South Africa. Since 1985, he and his family had transformed a barren piece of land into a sanctuary for wild animals. In 2006, Leon acquired 3 lion cubs, and he raised them as his own. The Lion Game Lodge was popular with tourists, and the local school children were regularly introduced to the lions and allowed to get close to them. He explained to the visitors how he loved the animals and believed he had a special bond with them. When they were cubs, he even slept in the enclosure at night with them. He had also given them names, with the 2 male lions being called Rambo and Nikita, and the lioness called Katrin. On the day of the attack, he was fixing the outside fence of the lion enclosure, but he needed to enter it in order to complete the job. The lions were sitting peacefully in the sun and did not react when he came in. As he carried on with fixing the fence, he turned his back on the animals. Now, Mr. Van Biljon was well aware that this was a very risky thing to do with lions, but he believed he would be safe with them after years of care and love. But he underestimated the danger he had just put himself in. Without warning, one of the lions crept up behind him and attacked. The animal pulled him down to the ground and bit into his neck several times. There was a park worker nearby, and to his horror, he saw all this happening. He quickly contacted the emergency services because he knew he could not enter the lion's enclosure himself to help Leon. When they arrived, they were met with a horrific scene. Leon was laying on the ground beside the fence. He was unconscious and blood was oozing out of his neck and other parts of his body. And to make his safe recovery near impossible, the 3 lions were protecting their prey by going around him as he lay on the ground. So to rescue Leon, the difficult decision was made to euthanize the lions. Tragically, by the time they reached him, Mr. Van Biljon had already succumbed to his injuries. Mr. Van Biljon's daughter, Leonette Van Wyck, told reporters of her father's dedication to his work and that he was at peace now. She said her father had lived a full life doing the things he loved to do, which was to raise lions and teach educational groups and other tourists more about them. If you found this video chilling and gripping, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more horror stories of wild animals that attack.